Josh Scott says his pedals are fairly priced. Well, today I'm going to put that to the test. I'm going to be building an Angry Charlie using nothing but Mojo components and counting every penny. Spoiler alert, the results aren't what you think. Hello people, Joe from Hello Sailor Effects here. Welcome to today's video. In today's video, I'm going to be carrying out my own little thought experiment. Are we, as pedal builders, ripping you off? In today's episode, we're going to be building this Angry Charlie using nothing but Mojo components like these. Stick around to the end and you're going to see how much it costs really to build a boutique pedal. Cheers. So first of all, I'm not going to be taking into account any of the costs for labour for myself, all the time it took me to learn how to build pedals. I mean, I built my first pedal in 2008 and I've been building them ever since at sea on a warship. So we're going to discount that for a start. The Enclosure. Now, I probably could count the Enclosure, but I'm not going to because I don't want to have to work out how many pedals I can spray with one can of nitrocellulose. I'm certainly not going to put the cost of a whole can on the cost of this pedal build. That would be unfair. And the same goes for my decals. So we're just going to park that to one side and not think about it. As far as components go, it's going to be a best guess from me. And that's mainly because I can't remember where I got all my components from. I don't buy them as singles, and sometimes I reclaim them from old PCBs or warships. If anyone from work's watching, I don't claim them from warships. So sometimes I reclaim them from old bits of kit, and you know, it's hard to put a price on that, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do a best guess. Here we have all the components ready for today's build. The plan is I'm going to go through each component while mounting it onto the PCB, and I'm going to price up as I go along. Now, for things like modern resistors, just for ease, because I buy them in bulk, I'm just going to put them down as like 1p. And then for the vintage resistors, I'm going to put them all down as 50p. Although some ones, like these ones, may cost more, these ones more, these ones a little bit less. So we're just going to price them up like that. And you know, a lot of this stuff I've bought over the years, so it's really hard to price them. Things like these electrolytic caps, you know, we'll do them as we go. Now, the PCB, that come from 5 Cats Pedals, and that actually cost £4.50. So we'll put that in there. There's our first valuation. So right off the bat, we've got £4.50. Our Enclosure, with Charlie looking not so very angry. He looks quite happy with himself, or maybe a little bit mischievous. There you go. It is, of course, a famous Banksy artwork that I quite like. For the Enclosure, these cost about £5, maybe, if you buy them in bulk. £10 if you don't buy them in bulk. The paint costs money, the nitrocellulose lacquer, the decals cost money. I'm not actually going to count them into the price, just because if you wanted to build this, then you could, of course, just build it yourself. And I've just noticed while I'm looking at this as part of the video, I'm actually missing a control. Ha! So we'll be drilling another hole in this to add the extra pot. Get in. Well done, Joe. We've got our hole drilled in our Enclosure. We can crack on with the rest of this video. I am indeed going to start off with the resistors. And first on the list is our 3 1 meg resistors. Now they each cost 50p, as we stated before. So that takes us to £1.50 to start. There's our first 3 resistors on the board, our 3 1 megs. Now it's time to move on to our 10, 12 and 17, which are all 6.8k. Now full disclosure, I didn't have any 6.8k resistors, so I'm having to mix and match some values. So I am using 2 resistors instead of 1. And because of that, I'm not going to count these 3 in the price, because of course you could just buy some normal resistors. We're going to go with another £1.50 for these ones. If my chief engineer maths is right, which isn't very good, let's face it. You also may hear on this video, we are right in the middle of some sort of storm. There's like 90-mile-an-hour wind. I'm pretty convinced that the roof of my workshop's going to come off. So if you do hear the wind in the background, apologies. Right, so if you're in this position where you're having to use 2 different values, and especially if they're large resistors like this, the best way I've found to do it is the method that you will all know I call the helicopter method, which is ridiculous because it's got nothing to do with helicopters. as you know, I have well, I'm saying as you know, as if you do know, but I have stated in other videos, I absolutely despise helos. I'd never go up in one. All starting in 2004 or 5, I think, when we pulled HMS Portland's Wildcat, no, Lynx helicopter out of the water. And there weren't much left of people, let's face it, so there's no way I'd go up in one of them things. Anyway, I like to twist them together like that. Then wet my tip with hay. And there's our resistor. Now, of course, don't clip it too close, as I have previously said, to the body of the resistors. Just live with the little tab at the top, because if you don't, you'll clip it too close and it'll just fall apart. Now this one's going in R10. All I'm going to do is I'm going to put the larger resistor facing outboard because there's more space. And now we've reached another problem. This resistor doesn't actually fit in the hole. So how am I going to get round this one? I'm going to take my flat nose pliers and I'm going to squeeze the bottom of this as hard as I can to flatten it out. Maybe if I clip them to length it might be a bit easier. So I squeeze the bottom of this as hard as I can to flatten it out. And then I'm going to clip it in half at an angle. Now I hope you can see that. I'm clipping at an angle to give it a point. You're kind of clipping it into like a, I don't know, like a sharp edge, if you like. And then that sharp edge should just about fit through the hole there. Now I've got a little bit of a tang sticking through, so I can solder it. And we're good to go. That is all 3 of our 6.8K resistors put in. Now we're going to go on to 1K. Now I'm using these high precision 1K resistors. These do cost about £2 each. But, you know, in all fairness, I think I'm just going to put them down as 50p each to stay on the conservative side. See if I can keep the price down. Let's put them in 50p each. That takes us to £1. Next on the list is R5 and R6, which are 22k, and I am using some vintage resistors there, so they're 50p each. That's another £1. Okay, so we've got a fun fact about these resistors now. They're a little bit too big to fit into the gap here. For bending the legs down, they're just not going to quite fit. So rather than lying them on their side, I'm going to do like Ibanez did back in the day. Stand them up straight and just bend one leg over like this. Now, not only does that mean that it'll fit in there nicely and I won't have to mess about trying to bend the legs in funny shapes to get them in, it also looks cool as hell. And if Ibanez put their hand in a fire, I definitely would too. And this is how they look on the board. I think they look rather handsome. Now, moving on, we are on to R7 and R16. They are both 10k resistors, and I've used modern resistors, so we're going to add them in as 2p. Seems almost pointless writing that in there, but I'm going to put it on anyway. There we have R7 and R16 fitted. We're moving on to R11 and R14. Now this is an interesting one because these are obviously smaller wattage values than these ones. Now, I wonder if anyone in the comments can tell me if you can hear the difference between larger resistors that look cooler, undoubtedly, or smaller ones. Now, there was an episode of That Pedal Show where they pitted 2 pedals against each other, one SMD and one through hole. Now, I expected to like the through hole pedal much more, but to my ears, or should I say my eyes, I thought that maybe the SMD one was brighter. Now, I'm not sure. But for me, in my crazy twisted mind, I'm thinking it's the space between components. That's why I like tagboard better, is because the space between components is greater. But maybe on these SMD components, the space between the components is greater because the components themselves are smaller. I don't know. What do you guys think in the comments? Anyway, back onto this. There's two 2.k resistors. That's R11 and R14. And they are both going to cost 0.02, so 2p. Now it's just occurred to me that I'm following the 5 Cats pedals build here. I've not actually verified any of these values against an actual Angry Charlie. So if anyone knows any of these components or component values are wrong, obviously I'm using different components, but if any of these values are wrong in a big way, please let me know. And I've just noticed on my notes here, I put 6.66k for my 6.8k because that's what it come to on my multimeter when I measured my 6.8k resistors that I made up out of 2 resistors. So I am a little bit off on that. Please don't shoot me. Anyway, let's get these 2.2Ks fitted. There we have both of them resistors fitted in, and as you can see, they do have the added bonus of fitting into the holes that they were designed for, basically. But, you know, it kind of makes me sad to see them sat on there instead of up off the board like that. But I don't know. Anyway, let's move on to our checklist. What's next? Next, we have R9, which is a 470 ohm resistor. And again, I've opted for the modern one. So that is going to be 0.01. The board's starting to come together now. It's looking pretty good, if I do say so myself. Next, we're on to our 68k resistor, which is a vintage resistor. I know it looks a little bit plain as far as vintage ones go, but it is. So that's going to cost us 50 pence. Definitely going to break the bank, this one. I say this all the time with vintage resistors. You must clean the legs. Now, I do it either with my Stanley blade.
Fucking Chelsea, aren't you?
Yeah. You flash cockney bastards. You know Stanley?
Obviously, being from Liverpool, we love a good Stanley blade, but I'm just using my Nipex snips today. Thank you, Marcus Reeves, as ever, for putting me onto these things. I've got about 10 pairs. I genuinely love them. If you want a pair yourself, please check the affiliate links in the comments, and I'll get a little bit of a kickback if you buy a set. But they are fantastic. Anyway, once your legs are cleaned, you can then wet the tip. And don't forget our wet the tip t-shirts. I know how much everyone loves them ones. Then you can wet the tip and get this installed. Now on to our last resistor, which is R15. It's a 15k resistor. I don't normally see these in many pedals, apart from my Kossoff drive, oddly enough. So I did have one in stock, and it is, of course, a vintage resistor, so that's going to cost us 50 pence. Now that all of the resistors are on the PCB, I'd like us all to stop and go and write a comment in the comment section and let me know how much you think this pedal's going to cost in total to build at this point, and then we'll see how close you get at the end. Now, I had some preconceptions and I was nowhere near right. Let's see how close you can get. Looking at this board, there's absolutely no way I'm getting all of the capacitors that I've chosen for this project on the top of the board. It's just not happening. So if there's any that I can't fit on, I'll either try and mount them underneath, or I'll run wires and mount them off board to maybe a mini board, or I'll just glue them down in an enclosure. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. First up is a tantalum capacitor. Now these ones are generally found on warships on the older through hole, well, it's all through hole really, but the older PCBs, mainly for things like motor thermal protection units and the like. They are tantalum and they have a positive and a negative. Now I have said this thousands of times, if you get these capacitors, see if I can get it in view. Yep, there we are. The side that has like the little bump at the end, and handily on this one it also has a little plus. That is the positive, and the flat edge is the negative. Okay, so positive, negative. Now, how much do these cost? I found them here for £1.50 each. I can't remember how much I paid for them ones, or even if I got them off the ship or whatever, but I'm going to go with £1.49, sorry, £1.49 each. And I think that that's fair. Now, another conundrum about these capacitors is the fact that they are lay flat or axial capacitors, that way round, as opposed to radial, like these bad boys. So this board was designed for radial capacitors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend them over the positive side so they sit upright just like our resistors did. So there's our tantalum capacitors now fitted. Next, we're going to move on to our radial 100 UF capacitors. That's C1 and C7. These are 6 pence each. I buy my stuff from Switch Electronics, or these particular capacitors from Switch Electronics. If you check them out, I don't get any affiliates link from that bad boy, but they're about 6p each if you buy them as singles. So that is 12p in total. And we finish with our electrolytic capacitors and higher values. We're down onto this line of caps right here. Now first up, we've got C2 and 16. I think I miscorrectly said the 100 UF for 2 and 16 before. They're not. There's 1 and 7. So C2 and 16. I am, of course, using tropical fish caps. Now, I can't remember what I paid for these. I'm going to go with a conservative assessment of £1 each. If anyone wants to tell me that I'm way out and they cost less, put it in the comments. But for the purposes of this, I'm going to put £1 each. So they are going to be £2 added to the total volume. Another thing with these is you definitely need to clean the legs on these ones, because they really, really, really do get dirty over the time. I mean, I think they're from like the 60s or early 70s maybe. And another thing is they like to snap right here. So when you're manipulating the legs, either be very careful or dip them in some lacquer or something first. Okay, so this is a prime example. If you're new to building pedals and using these especially, this is a prime example of what happens when you don't clean the legs. So here we can see that this pin here has literally got no solder on whatsoever. So I'm going to give it a little clean with my snips now, because what happened was the solder just migrated straight through the joint and ended up at the bottom here because I didn't clean the leg properly. I swear I've still got PTSD from these tropical fish caps from when I first started out. I used them in maybe my first 5 builds. That definitely didn't work. 5, I'm being conservative there, more like 25. That didn't work because I weren't cleaning the legs properly and I weren't soldering correctly. I weren't using like a correct heated soldering iron. You got to get yourself a Hacko, everyone knows that. Now, funnily enough, I've recently got back from one of my very early customers, my third pedal or third ever built pedal. Check this bad boy out. This is the double doll face. So the doll face was the first one. And then this was the double doll face. I can't even open this pedal up because it gives me PTSD just to see them tropical fish caps and stuff in there. And the amount of glue and goop that's in here, it's horrific. But as you can see, even back then, I think I made this in like 2008, 2009. Even back then, it still had the Hello Sailor sort of style going on. It's like a tattoo style, whatever. Anyway, the point of the story is make sure you clean the legs of your old components. Speaking of vintage capacitors, we're now onto our 100 PF caps that are C5 and C8. Now I've gone with these gold Weimer capacitors. They are vintage. These are what were found in the old Selma crock skin amps. I absolutely love these things. I believe they were found in some Voxers as well, but don't quote me on that. Now to find the price, I can't find the exact value, but here is 10 pieces of them for £7.50. So I'm going to say 2 of them, 75p each, £1.50. That's what I'm going with. So let's write it in there for our total. £1.50. Right, for these, of course, like I said before, they're not going to fit in the holes, and they're quite wide, so they're going to be quite awkward to get in there. What I am going to do is I'm going to bend the leg over, just like I have for so many of them. Now to fit these on the board, you'll notice that one leg is further over on the body. I'm going to use that so then the body sticks out away from the centre of the cap, so I can try and get it out the way of the others. So I'm going to bend this leg over like this, and then that way the body is going to sit, it's going to overhang the edge where the cap's meant to go. And what that's going to do is just create a little bit of space in the middle for the next cap to sit in, hopefully. Next on the list is C3, which is a 220 NF, a nice large tropical fish cap. And look at this, just because this is a Josh Scott sort of build, he has the box. These old Phillips tropical fish, which of course is Mullard, same company. It's nice to have the box. This one's massive. It's definitely not going to fit in the C3 position up here. It's just not. It'll take out the next cap. So I'm going to mount that under the board and just lie it flat against the board with some double-sided sticky foam, and then I'll just mount the board a bit higher off the enclosure, and then at least we get this cap in there. It's a shame you won't get to see it, but it will be there. Now, full disclosure, most of the ones in this packet measured 230 NF and not 220 NF, but I did go through and measure them all out, and I think this one come out at 222 NF, so I'm close enough for government work. I know there's going to be 17 million people telling me that I shouldn't mount large capacitors under the board, or that I'm wasting money by putting these under the board, all of that jazz, whatever. I don't care. I know it's there. It makes me feel better. If I feel better, then that's all I care about. So we've now mounted our 220 NF cap under the board. So how much did that cost? I have no idea. I'm sure it cost more because of the box, so let's give it a search. Let's see. Philips Tropical Fish Cap.
6.5 hours later.
We've got £103.88 for 50. So let's see what we can do. £103.88 divided by 50 equals £2.7. I'm going to put that as £2. I think that's fair enough. So £2. Now on to C4, which is a 1NF. I'm using this modern-ish 1NF Weimer cap. Actually, I don't know if it is modern, but it's definitely not like 60s or whatever. And I'm pretty sure they cost about 5 pence each, so I'm just going to put 5 pence. I'm not going to bother looking through that. They are rather cheap, and you can buy them in bulk. I'm sure someone's going to write in the comments telling me how wrong I am and that they cost a lot less than 5 pence, but come on, it's barely negligible, is it? Right, now we're on to C4. C4, no, we've just done C4. Now we're on to C6, which is 100 NF. Do you know what? I know people hate me saying NF instead of microfarads. I know sometimes I do say NF. So microfarads, you got 0.1 microfarads or 100 NF. I do sometimes say 0.1 UF, and I know that annoys people, but there you go. So C6, 100 NF. Now these are multi-layer ceramic capacitors. They are old, but they do cost about 2 pence each, so I'm going to put 2 pence down. Again, barely worth adding it in, but I imagine it'd cost more if you're buying just one of them for a build like this, but whatever, we're going with 2 pence. The board's getting a little bit congested now because of my really sensible choices of capacitors, but there you go. Next on the list is, right, so we've done 100 NF, now 47 NF. So I've got this TCC, or 0.47 microfarads, UF for us normal people, uneducated people I should say, not normal people. So 47 NF, it's a TCC capacitor. Now how much do they cost? Let's put it into Google, shall we? TCC capacitor, look at that, it's coming up straight away. Capacitor 47 NF. Can we find one? Nope. Oh, there you go. That 100 pieces on eBay. Okay, so 100 pieces are $39.99. I could definitely do that maths in my head, but I'm not going to, because if I get it wrong, the whole internet will see that. So 39 pence. I think that's close enough for government work, isn't it? Actually, this cap gives a new or another technique that I may not have covered in this video. So this is obviously wider than what I need for that. I could mount it underneath the board like I have the previous one, because it is, you know, quite thick too. So it's going to impinge on C12. But I'm not going to. What I am going to do instead is bend one leg in on itself, like so, and then bend it back again. And that's going to give me the spacing that I need to fit it in here. Now, obviously, you could just buy the right size component for the board like a normal person, but I've never been normal in my life. This is our TCC 47NF capacitor cap. 47NF capacitor. Come on, spit your words out, Joe. Fitted. Next, we're going on to C12 and 14, which are 10 NF. Now I've got these old tropical fish caps. These ones in particular fall apart in your hands, so I highly advise that you dip them in lacquer if you're going to use these ones. And the legs are always particularly corroded, so you do have to clean them, and that's usually the point where they fall apart. I'm going to use these definitely. However, I think I might mount one of them under the board just to save a bit of space. I did in fact end up mounting both of these to the top of the board, because our next resistor, which is our next capacitor, which is our last capacitor, is this. Now it's a vintage, or an NOS polystyrene cap. Polystyrene, I think it's polystyrene. Anyway, these are real audio capacitors. Audio capacitors, they're meant for audio applications, quite sensitive to heat. But the legs are long, and I think I'm going to lie it flat on top, and I might be able to just squeeze it in there. So if I can just get the legs in the holes, he says, and then I'll just lie it flat sort of on top of the two tropical fish caps that I've just fitted. And I know I was saying before about having space between the components, but I'm using massive components on a tiny board. What are you going to do? Okay, so there's our capacitors all fitted, our resistors all fitted. We are now onto the diodes. This is where I've kind of messed up a bit. So first things first, you need a 1M5817. I haven't got one. I'm going to use a 1M4001. I think this is just polarity protection. I haven't really traced the circuit out, if I'm honest. I'm kind of painting by numbers, which is real unprofessional of me, I know. So I'm going to use this, and if it doesn't work, I've got a 1M5817 on order, so I'll change it out. Another thing is, you're supposed to use red clipping diodes. Now, since the early days of building pedals for me, all I wanted was a blue LED, so I could be like Robert Keeley when he did the modded blues driver. It's a blue LED, it looked cool, and I just wanted to be that. So I have absolutely no red LEDs in stock. I've only got blue, so I am using blue. So maybe Charlie's going to be a little less angry, I don't know. If it sounds odd after I've changed maybe this diode first, I will definitely change them out, but we'll see. That's D1 fitted. Now, I have actually raised it off the board slightly, and that's just because if I have to take it out, it'll be easier for me to remove that component with a bit of space between it and the board. I'm not envisaging I'll have to, but just in case. Both of our clipping diodes, or LEDs, fitted, and also our polarity protection diode. I hope it's a polarity protection diode, otherwise I've been talking rubbish. So the polarity protection diode is about 6p. I've kind of gone off the boil here writing these down, whoops. And the LEDs are about a penny each, so I'm going to put 2p. And again, you can probably pay more or less for them. Now another thing is tropical fish caps, as we said before, are about 50p each. I haven't added this in, so I'm going to put them down as £1. And our 2.2 NF cap, again, I think they're about 50p each. It is vintage and audio spec, so that tends to make it cost more. So I'm going to add that in there because I forgot already. Now moving on to the op-amps. It calls for U1 to be a LM833, which of course I don't have, and U2 to be a TLO72, which of course I don't have. So in their place, my good mate Simon from JHS Pedals put me onto a cool dual op-amp of the NJM072B. Now what he explained to me was that this kind of like a JRC 4558 on steroids. So I'm just going to go ahead and put them in there. I have ordered a substitute for each of them so I can swap them out. I'm going to put them in sockets as ever with any IC. I always put them in sockets just because it's easier. So the replacement, and I will add an affiliates link below, is an OPA 627. So the internet tells me that that's a good replacement. Whether it is or not, we shall find out. The one I've found is actually an SMD component one that has been soldered onto a gold pin board, which to me, fine. I'm going to give that a shot. But initially I'm just going to build it with these two op amps here, just because I've got them and I want to see what it sounds like. Hopefully I'll have a sound comparison at the end of both, but maybe not. So this op amp costs £3.91. I am going to put that in there. It was considerably more if I wanted to get an LM833, just because the cheaper ones are definitely fake. You know, there's no point in buying a cheaper one because you might as well just put any dual op amp in there. So £3.91, and a TL072. Again, I'm not too sure on the price of these, but I would guess 50 pence. I'm going to put 50 pence. If you think I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. I'm going to go ahead and just add the sockets in there for now. We have the soldering complete on the board. All I'm going to do now is add in all of the lengths of wire before mounting it into my enclosure. There we have it, all wired and ready to go. Now I know before anyone says it, I'm supposed to use the pots with the long legs, and this just mounts on the pots and it all looks amazing. Fits together easy, cheers. However, that would mean drilling my enclosure to the same spec as everyone else, and I cannot stand being the same as anyone else. Seems like I might as well not bother. Of course, my enclosure is larger, it's more awkward, get in, and the pots are in completely different positions. This is going to be mounted right in the middle over the top of them three middle pots there, and hopefully it'll squeeze past my stump switch. That's how I'm going to mount it. So now it's onto the hardware on the enclosure. First thing I'm going to go with is my stump switch. Now I use these gold pin stump switches. They are softer touch than, they're not soft touch per se, but they're softer touch than others I've found. I really like them. They cost about £4 each, so I'm going to write that in as £4. Of course you can get cheaper ones or you can buy them in bulk. I get it. Now to mount it, I really do. I know Josh uses the white washer, and he also uses a white washer on a 9-volt jack. If you've ever owned one of his pedals, I've got hundreds. In fact, the Angry Charlie was probably my first quote-unquote boutique pedal that I ever owned, outside of maybe an Analog Man fuzz. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and mount that. Next on the list is our 9-volt jack. I'm going with a red one. Red's an angry colour. Charlie's angry. That's what I'm going with. And because Josh normally uses a white washer on his 9-volt jacks, I'm going to go ahead and use a metal washer, just the same as our stump switch, providing it fits. Should do. Anyway, look pretty good, I think. There's our 9-volt socket fitted. Now I get these for about 40 pence each, I think. And again, you could probably get them from somewhere else for cheaper or whatnot, but I'm going to put 40 pence in there. And next we're going to go with our pots. Now, caveat, basically I've changed that much on this pedal now. It's not an Angry Charlie anymore. You know, the blue LEDs, the op amps. I don't actually have the right pots for the job. So it calls for some linear logarithmic. I'm never going to be able to say that word. It calls for some linear pots. I've only got audio pots. So what I'm going to do is I've got these dual 50k audio potentiometers, and I'm just going to join both the legs together and create a 25k pot. And that won't be linear or audio anymore because I'm combining two of them. It'll be something completely different. So the sweep's going to be probably rubbish compared to what Josh intended. However, it's all I've got, and in this massive thought experiment of mine to see how much it would cost me to build an Angry Charlie, that's what I'm going to do. Also, same again with our 100k pots. There's one that's audio and two that are B. B is linear. I haven't got them. I've only got log pots, so all three are going to be log, which again is wrong and basically ruining Josh's design. If he ever by some miracle sees this video, sorry mate, it's just what it is. It's what I've got in stock. Oh, price wise, I think I get these for about 50 pence each. I'm going to go with 50 pence each. There's 5 of them, £2.50 sounds about right to me. At this point of the video, it might be prudent for me to note that basically this is a completely different pedal to the Angry Charlie, mainly because I don't have the right components to build the exact Angry Charlie. So am I really testing Josh Scott's pedal building prices, or am I just building a pedal and seeing how much it costs me? I'll leave that one with you. There's all of our pots now fitted. Next, I'm going to go on to the jacks. Now, I think they cost about 50 pence each. I may be wrong, but so that takes us to £1 for two. Now, I know you could buy different style ones, but I've got these ones here and they're really well made. They cost about 50 pence each. There's our jacks fitted. As you can tell, my drilling is well off. Joe H5, get in. Apologies about that. Next, we're going to go on to our LED and bezel. Now, I do this a little bit differently from most people, but I think it cost me about 10 pence for the pair of them. So I'm going to go with 10 pence. It's my pedal build. I can do what I want. There's our LED bezel fitted, and now we're on to the knobs. Now, you could use any style knobs for these, as cheap as you like or as expensive as you like. But because I'm going boutique-y, whatever, I'm going to use these knee style knobs. I like the maroon colour. I think these ones are made of Bakelite. I've had several different types of these, and some of them are much better made than others, is all I'm going to say. Now, as far as price goes, quick search on Google to look for knee style knobs, and we get these ones come up, and they are, in fact, if I zoom in, £3.88 plus tax. So I'm going to round them down to £3 each because I think that's what I paid for them. And it is, of course, 5 of them. 3 times 5, £15. So the knobs are £15. But again, if you wanted, you could pay a lot less than that for your knobs, but I haven't. Now, the mammoth task of wiring all of this in, get on. It's made a little bit easier by the fact that I use this silicone wire. That's like really flexible. It's easy to manipulate around the enclosure and stuff. And it's become a staple in my building. If anyone's interested, this is the stuff I use. It's called BN Tech Go. I get it off Amazon. There is an affiliates link in the comments if anyone's interested. I usually use pink because on board a warship, all of the signal wires are in pink. That's why we call the electricians pinkies, or the weapon engineer electricians pinkies. But yeah, so I have actually only got battleship grade because I've run out of this stuff and this is all I had in stock. I'm going to go ahead and get cracking. That's all the wires run off our board. I've connected the jacks together at the AF connections and connected that to the AF jack. Next step is going to be to add the input and output of our switch. The little loop at the back that I forget every single time. I say this all the time. If I don't say it on camera, I'll definitely forget it. And there's nothing worse than coming to test the pedal, and when it's in the off position, it just doesn't work. Then I'll also add in the earth coming from our jack. I like to do that with a resistor this side instead of on the positive side. You can do it however you like. And then I'll join these two pins together on our DC jack and run a wire around and attach it to the live of our LED. And that should be it. Oh, of course, I'm definitely going to forget to put our 2 ICs in there. And then we'll have a little talk through, see what I think of the build so far, and we'll also talk about the price. That's all the wires run off our board. I've connected the jacks together at the AF connections and connected that to the AF jack. Next step is going to be to add the input and output of our switch. The little loop at the back that I forget every single time. I say this all the time. If I don't say it on camera, I'll definitely forget it. And there's nothing worse than coming to test the pedal, and when it's in the off position, it just doesn't work. Then I'll also add in the earth coming from our jack. I like to do that with a resistor this side instead of on the positive side. You can do it however you like. And then I'll join these two pins together on our DC jack and run a wire around and attach it to the live of our LED. And that should be it. Oh, of course, I'm definitely going to forget to put our 2 ICs in there. And then we'll have a little talk through, see what I think of the build so far, and we'll also talk about the price. Okay, so I absolutely forgot the LED resistor. I'm going to be using this 4.7k high precision resistor. So I'm going to add in another 50 pence. I'm sure that one will break the bank. But we've got to have it in there because, you know, well, it did actually cost that some. In fact, I think it was probably more than that. But this does give me a chance to show how I couldn't limit my LEDs. So first of all, I'm going to clean the legs because it needs it. And I'm going to go between the negative leg of our LED and these two lugs here on my switch, which, I mean, you only really need to hit the middle lug, but I like to slide it through the both of them for strength. So it's just a simple 90-degree bend. Then I can feed the resistor through here. I'll clip a bit off, it's a bit long. But I can feed the resistor through here. Well done, Joe. You can probably see a little bit of steam condensation coming off my breath here, which is because it's absolutely freezing here in the UK at the minute and I haven't got a heater out here yet. Right, so quick wet the tip, hey? I mean, you only really need to solder the middle joint. In fact, I'm going to do a video on wiring up these switches and just general pedal wiring from the power switch, jacks and stuff like that. I'm going to do that soon, so watch out for that one. But you only really need to do the middle lug. I just do them both because, well, a little bit of added, I don't know, you just do. And then you can manipulate your resistor leg so then it's touching the LED and just give it a little solder. Now remember, things like your LED and your pots are quite sensitive to heat, so if you're going to be soldering them, make sure you don't hold your iron on forever. Although try not to, like, when I first started out, I was like holding that iron on for a split second and pulling it away in case it burned something, and I ended up with poor solder joints. So if you practice for a while, you'll get into the habit of, well, you get a feel basically for that, knowing how long it is. Like, for example, I didn't have it on very long at all there, but I have my iron really hot, probably hotter than what other people would have. Anyway, there we have it, nice solid solder joint there, and it comes up to our pot there, to our jack there, what am I saying, to our switch there. Now I'm going to add in that loop before I forget. There we have it all wired up and ready to go. What do we think? Of course I went with purple cable ties, or for my American friends, zip ties, just to round it off. And I just noticed I haven't put the ICs in, which I always forget. And here's what it looks like on the top. So we have our Bakelite maroon Neve style knobs. We've got our Not So Angry Charlie on the front. Get in. I do need to put some epoxy to create the lens on my LED, as I like to do. But apart from that, we're good to go. We should be able to give it a sound test. But before we do that, I'm going to go and take my shoes and socks off. So I've got all my digits available to count up how much this pedal cost. How much did it cost me to build a boutique Angry Charlie in components? Well, can I get a drum roll, please? That's right, £50.59. That's incredible. It's way less than I thought it was going to cost. And if we translate that to American dollars, $64, which is pretty much bang on what Josh was saying it costs him to build a Ross pedal, which is insane to me. I didn't think that was going to happen. Now, I know we haven't taken into account workmanship or cost of heating, space, all of that jazz, but it's amazing that it costs pretty much the same for me to build a boutique pedal as it would for Josh to build a mass-produced one. Now, I know he was taking into account his enclosure and the colour and the screen printing, which is kind of, well, whatever. It is what it is. But actually, I think this typifies the fact that John Nathan Cordy actually released an apology video, which I'm sure we've all seen too, to Josh after Josh's retort. So all in all, I think the only person missing out, or the only people missing out here, are those little pedal builders who don't have a big name. And I think I speak for us all when I say, put your prices up, Josh. There's a thing called inflation. Get them up. Seriously though, I hope everyone's enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed this thought experiment to see how much it would cost me to build one of Josh's designs. Now we're on to the sound sample. But before the sound sample, I'd like to just say a massive apology. I actually wired up every single pot in this pedal, every single one, all 5 of them, backwards. Can you believe it? Backwards. I've just been saying over 15 years of pedal building experience and they're all backwards. So when I'm lowering the volume or the gain, I'm actually increasing it. In fact, I only mess with the gain for that very reason. I will switch these pots round before I sell this pedal. It'll be up for sale on my website, probably when this video comes out. What do I say for that? Anyway, next onto the sound sample. If you enjoyed that video of me building an Angry Charlie pedal, you're going to love this video of me building a ZVEX box of rock.